on, guys? Welcome back to another episode. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how I clean and bleach skulls. I've had quite a few of you ask me on the shorts that I've done if I could show the whole process, so that's what we're going to do today. First thing I do is I get all the skulls out of the freezer and put them in the sink and let them thaw out. So that's what we're doing right now. Just get them all thawed out so that we can get the brains out. And what we're going to do is we're going to go outside. I've got a high pressure attachment for my hose, and we're going to blast that high pressure water down inside there, and it gets all the brains out, and then that way these things boil and clean a lot faster. So let's go outside and we're going to do that, and I'll show you that process. Alright guys, so pretty simple process here. All we're going to do is we've got that brain stem sticking out right there. What I've done is I've actually gotten one of those gardening attachments with the little rubber hose here. And you can just take that and feed it straight up into the brain cavity. Alright, now obviously I've got this extra one here, so I got to turn this off and I got to block it. But basically you're just going to sit there and work on it and just work that hose around in there and get all that brain matter out. So I'm going to turn on the hose here and we're going to get all this stuff out. If you're a little bit squeamish, you can skip this part, but if you're doing this, I'm guessing you're not squeamish. And you just sit there and just work that hose around in there, and it just pushes all that brain matter out. You turn up the pressure on the hose a little bit. Shove that hose up in there and just work it around, and it gets all that stuff out of there, and that'll make these boil a lot faster and clean a lot quicker. If you leave that in, it's got to boil all that out and you got to work it out later. So if you do this ahead of time, you'll save yourself a lot of time in the cleaning process. So that's pretty much cleaned out. I've got a whole bunch more to do, so I'm going to get them done, and we'll see you back inside. Alright guys, so we've got them all cleaned up. We've got this badger skull right here. You can see there's a lot of meat and stuff on it. What you want to do is get a knife and just trim all this off, because you don't want all that extra meat on there. It's just going to take a lot longer for these to get cleaned up and boil all that stuff off. So instead of waiting for it to boil off, it's just a lot easier just to trim it. So we're gonna do that. Please, my kid's watching Bluey in the background, so hopefully that's not too distracting here. But you got a 3-year-old, what you gonna do, right? So just try and trim all that off as much as you can. We've already cleaned all the brains out, so that makes it a lot easier. And that'll make these boil a lot quicker and clean up a lot faster. We're going to go through and just clean all this meat off. There's big chunks of it. Don't need to get all of it. You just want to get the main big chunks, and just this will make it all go a little bit faster. So we're going to work on that, and then we'll be back, and we're going to put it on the oven, and I'll show you that. Alright guys, so we've got all our skulls in the pot. Just got a nice big 3-quart pot here, and just put the oven on high. And what we're going to need, you need some OxiClean, and then what I like to use is a good metal pair of tongs. This is like a straw cleaner. This helps get into little cavities and stuff in the skulls to get that little bit of meat and stuff out once you get to that point. And then just a little metal brush. These things work awesome for scrubbing off all of the cartilage and everything once we get to that stage. So those are just some tools that come in handy while you're doing this. Like I said, just take a scoop. I just put, about that much. It's maybe a 1/4 cup, but I just sprinkle it in. And once that water gets boiling, you'll get like a white film on top from the OxiClean. And that's going to help break down the meat and all the cartilage and everything, and turns it basically into a jello. So we're going to let that get to a boil, and then I'll bring you back. Alright guys, so this is what it's going to look like. You want to add it in, let it boil up. It's going to bubble up like this, and then those bubbles eventually will dissipate. It's gonna boil over here, so I gotta fix this really quick. Hang on. Take it off the heat. I just added some more soap to it. So you just gotta kind of monitor it. Otherwise it will boil over on you. Turn the heat down a little. I had it on high, so you turn that down. But eventually these bubbles will kind of dissipate as well once all the oils and grease and everything kind of bubble out of it. But it'll break down that meat and it just kind of gels it all. And then once you have it kind of broken down, you'll kind of see it'll start peeling away all by itself. And then you can take the skulls out and start cleaning them. So we're gonna let this boil for a little bit longer, and then I'll show you guys that step. Alright guys, so here's what I'm talking about when I say it's gonna start peeling off all by itself. I mean, this is just clean bone right there. You can kind of see it's just starting to roll back, even in the eye sockets and everything. It's all just pulling back all by itself. So we're gonna take this guy out and we're gonna start cleaning him up. Then we'll probably put it back in to get the last little bits off. We're gonna get this thing going though. Alright guys, we're back to the sink here. It's still kind of warm, so I just hit it with some cold water. That's kind of cool it off. And let's take a little small knife or something. You can kind of peel some of this back. As you go, this actually gets to the point where you can do this with your fingers. Once you get a little bit, you can actually just peel that whole chunk right off and you get it nice and clean. So you just pull those whole chunks right off. Same with on the other side, just do that. Peel it off. And you just work this meat right off. It all just kind of peels off. Once you get to the back, you get a little bit of cartilage and stuff back there you don't want to cut. Right up here, same thing, just cut it back. And just work that knife around, just be careful not to cut yourself. And you push that stuff out, the eye sockets, and they'll get cleaned up real quick and easy. They just clean up real nice. That OxiClean though, just makes all this just peel right off the bone. And just turns a lot of this just to jelly. And the longer it boils, the more it'll clean up. So we're gonna get some of these big chunks off and then we're gonna put this guy back in the pot and I'll be back after a minute. Alright guys, so I'm doing a whole bunch of skulls here, so I just replaced the water because it was getting really dirty and really greasy. But this is that badger skull that I was peeling the meat off at the beginning. You can see it's almost done. Just got a little bit more meat there, so we're just gonna get that boil. If you're doing a whole lot of skulls, this process can take a while. I've got probably 10 in here, so this is it takes me a lot longer. If you're just doing one skull, this is probably max 45-minute process here. It goes really quick if you're just doing one skull. If you're doing a bunch, it's going to take a couple hours. But just replaced all the water, and so we're going to let it run here for a little bit longer, get it back to a boil. This is just with adding the OxiClean and filling it up with water. But that OxiClean, I mean, you guys can see. I mean, here's a cat skull. I mean, that comes out super white, and that's without even doing the bleaching process. So it does a really good job, and it gets all that meat and everything. It just turns into a gel, and then it just scrubs right off with that scrub brush. So I'm gonna let this boil for a little longer, and then I'll show you scrubbing off some of the stuff, and then we'll get to bleaching them. All right, guys, we got a couple of the jaws here. Again, they're a little bit warm, but most of the stuff is peeled off of them. And like I said, it just kind of, all that stuff just kind of turns to mush. All that, you can see this in the frame here. But that's all that just cartilage and everything else runs along teeth and everything. It just turns to this, basically this jelly goo. And it just comes right off, peels off real easy. Last of the meat fell off of these. All I did was just separate them from the top and just throw them back in the water. But you can just take the wire brush and just run it along the teeth here. Just knock the last of that off. Just wire brush works best. Just work it around the teeth. Just knock all that off. Still got Bluey playing in the background there. So my daughter's back there watching Bluey and playing with magnetiles while I'm doing this. Gotta keep the kids entertained. So we got that all cleaned up, and we're gonna just put that off to the side. The last little bit out of here, the knife. You just see that just comes right out. And we're just gonna put this off to the side, and then we're gonna take this and do the bleaching process. So I'll show you guys that in a minute. Alright guys, so just like with the jaws, we've got one of the skulls here. It's mostly cleaned off already. A lot of the other stuff is falling off just by boiling it some more in that fresh bottled water. Like I said, with the if you're just doing one skull, you're not going to have to replace the water, but if you're doing a bunch of skulls, you'll probably have to replace the water once or twice depending on how many you're doing. You just kind of gauge it off of how dirty the water's getting and how greasy it's getting and everything. And you don't want these boiling in that grease for forever, otherwise it's not gonna, that grease will get into the bone. So you want to replace the water and boil it a little bit more to get the rest of that grease out of there. And then you don't have to worry about doing the step. A lot of people do the Dawn dish soap step. You don't have to do that if you use an OxyClean and you replace the water a couple times. But you can see this stuff just peels right out, and I'm going to even hit it with the brush here in a minute. But it just gets all of that stuff right off. It just comes right out there. Get around the teeth, almost like a toothbrush. Just brushing it right off. All that gel comes right off of there. And it's basically just that cartilage and everything that was in there. Ligaments, cartilage, even some meat, it all just gels. And then just brushes right out. Around here, you still got a little bit of chunks of meat around the ears. You can cut that out. If you need to throw it back in the water, you can. You just keep working it. I know I'm breaking the cardinal rules here, cutting towards myself and everything, so don't copy that. If you're going to use a knife, be very careful with it. This knife started off sharp, but it's ground across a lot of skulls, so it's getting dull here. I probably need to put an edge back on it. But just grind all that meat off. If you have to toss it back in and get it a little bit more, you can. But this stuff just comes off pretty easy. And you get it all cleaned out. Give it a rinse. We'll get this back in the water and I'll let it soak a little bit longer. We'll finish it up and then I'll show you how to clean out the nasal cavity. Alright guys, so you have a couple of options here. One, you can just clean out your nasal cavities like this, and you just basically, all you're doing with that is you take that hose cleaner, or not the hose cleaner, but the straw cleaning piece, and you just jam it up in there and kind of swirl it around and get all the bits and pieces out of there. You can fill this up with the bleach solution that I'm going to show you guys how to make, and that'll brighten it all up and clean it all up and make it look nice. The other option is you keep boiling these skulls until it liquefies all of the cartilage up inside that nasal cavity, and it'll give you that little, all the swirly bones and everything in there, and you can leave them in. This definitely takes longer, and you need to add more of the OxyClean to your water, and like dump out the old water, add new water, dump more OxyClean in there. But it will eventually just turn all that cartilage and everything up inside the nasal cavity to kind of a goop, and then you can just flush it out with the water. You just turn on your water and blast it down inside. Alright guys, so we've got a whole bunch of our skulls here. I still got a few more boiling, but we've got enough to get going here. So I've got all these skulls out, and what I'm using to whiten them is I'm using Salon Care 40 Volume Cream and Salon Care Quick White. I'll put links down below for both of these, so you guys can find them there. Another thing you need is like one of these little brushes for like brushing it in. I picked this one up at Sally's Beauty Supply. And then you're gonna want some solo cups. So what you're gonna do Just gonna dump some of the quick white powder into the cup, add some of the salon care stuff, and what I do is I just keep adding the volume cream until it kind of gets into like an Elmer's glue kind of consistency. Once I have that consistency, then I just paint it onto the skulls. So that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna get going with that. All right, guys, so this is the kind of consistency I'm looking for. You just kind of keep mixing until you get kind of, it's just a little thicker than Elmer's glue. It's kind of almost an icing consistency, but just kind of a runny icing. So you're gonna mix it together till you get that, and then you just start painting it on the skulls. So bring you down here, and we can kind of see which one we want to do here. We'll just grab this guy here, and we're just gonna start loading it up on here. Okay. And you just get it all over there. You get it on the inside, and you just work around. And I just load it on here. And you just punch it in, get it all in there. Paint all the way around the teeth and everything. And I'll probably have to mix this up a couple of times. I'm going to turn on the fan here in a minute because this stuff's got a pretty strong smell to it. You want to be in a well-ventilated room when you do this. So either do it outside or in a good well-ventilated area. I'm going to turn the fan on in here in a minute so that I don't get run out of here by the fumes. But I'm going to keep painting this on until I get the whole skull done. And I'm going to let this stuff sit on it for a good 45 minutes or so. And then I'll rinse it off with hot water. And then just set it out to dry, and it should be done. Sometimes I have to do an extra coat if I have one that's really bad. This one will probably take 2 coats to get all that off color out of there. But for most of them, you can get away with 1 coat. And just work it around. Make sure you get everywhere with it. Like I said, I just stuff it into that cavity in there and really get the whole thing done. Hopefully this is in focus. And we'll just paint the rest of that on there. And like I said, then we'll just let it sit for about 45 minutes or so. And this thing will be bright white by the time it's done. Alright, so I'll bring you guys back when I've got when it's time to rinse these off. And we'll have a look at it. Alright guys, so this has been going, let this go for a few hours actually. And I can already see just in some of the spots on these that they are way, way brighter. So if you remember, this is a Badger one that I haven't done yet. So that kind of gives you an idea of what one of these is what it looks like beforehand. And this one's better than some of the ones that were in there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get the got a shower head here that we're going to rinse these off with. Turn that on. I'm just going to start spraying these off and we're going to see how we ended up. And you can see some of them are still kind of dark. So we're going to have to do a second coat on those ones. And some of these are turning out pretty bright. Now Coyote's already a lot brighter. This guy's a lot brighter. Some of them you can see on the inside. You can see that through the skull there. It's got that dark section's up around the nose. I think that's blood or something that's up there that never came out when I boiled them. So that one turned out beautiful right there. You can see that one. So you rinse all this off, and they're all wet. And once they dry, they actually dry a lot whiter and brighter. So we're gonna get these all rinsed off, and then we'll go from there. So I'll bring you back in just a second. Alrighty guys, so here they are. That's the Badger that we started off with. I was cutting all the meat off from the beginning. It's one of the Bobcats. I had this old jaw that actually matches this skull. This skull is a few years old now. But that was a really old Bobcat. He had some busted teeth and everything else. But Game & Fish was nice enough to let me keep this one jaw, because if you can see right there, there's a pellet or something stuck in that cat's jaw. And you can see it from the inside. And then we got the Coyote here. but you can see just how nice and bright and white these all are, and they just make awesome things for putting on your desk, put them on your mantle. Just really cool little memories to have. And yeah, so again, I'm going to put all the links for everything, all the products that I use to whiten these down below, so check those out. Until next time, guys, we'll catch you down the line.